Welcome back to Nights with Chris Boyle. Joining us now is the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, John Lott. Dr. Lott, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
I'm really excited to have you on, especially because this study that your team is behind, it really has the potential to, quite frankly, shape this election. This is an issue that we saw, I don't know how else to say it, misinformationed about. I don't know if lied about is the wrong word. I don't want to get sued here, but the wrong information was put out there in a very public way during the CBS debate with Kamala Harris. This lie has been spread around, trying to make it out like the Harris-Biden team has made America a safer place when, quite frankly, you've shown that it hasn't. Talk to us a little bit, number one, about the data that the FBI was trying to cover up and that they just, quite frankly, very quietly admitted to.
Right. Well, when David Muir fact-checked Trump in the presidential debate, and he said that the FBI data shows that crime has been falling, there's basically two errors with it. One is the FBI doesn't measure crime. It measures crime, the number of crimes reported to police. And even then, in part, it's an estimate, not just counting the number of crimes that are reported. But beyond that, the final numbers that he would be referring to came out in October 2023 for the previous year, 2022. And at the time, the FBI had claimed that violent crime during 2022 had fallen by 2.1%. And we've had headline after headline in news organizations over the last year saying things like crime is falling, but people mistakenly or erroneously think that it's increasing. Well, last month, the FBI came out with its data for 2023, and kind of secretly, they revised their data for earlier years. And they don't mention the revision in their press release, and I assume 95% of the reporters merely just look at the press release when they write up their stories. And even if you had read their report, there's only one sentence buried in a footnote that says that they had updated the data for 2022. And, it's only when you download the data file for this year and hopefully kept the data file for last year that you see the changes that they've made between that. Rather than a 2.1% drop in violent crime during 2022, they're now claiming that it was a 4.5% increase. If they hadn't increased it, then the claimed drop that they're so far making for 2023 would have been less than half of what they're saying. And so, at the very least, you want the FBI to be transparent. You don't want to have people to dig through the various Excel files that they put out each year in order to try to figure out that they've changed the data and how they've changed it. And you want to have some explanation for why they made the changes that they did. And there's really none of that for 2022. So David Muir, presumably, if he had known that the data for 2022 had shown a 4.5% increase, he wouldn't have been able to make the claim. You would have been able to say the FBI's estimated numbers of reported violent crimes or crime to the police had increased. So just to try to make it concrete in another way, this change shows that between 2021 and 2022, there were over 80,000 more violent crimes than they had originally reported. There were over 1,699 murders, over 7,000 rapes, over 33,000 robberies, over 37,000 aggravated assaults, and over 198,000 more property crimes than they had originally reported. These are huge changes, affecting large numbers of people. But there's a more basic problem, and that is it gets back to this issue of reported crimes. What people don't understand is that there are two measures that the Department of Justice has of crime. One is the FBI data on the number of crimes or estimated number of crimes reported to police. And the other one is from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which has something called the National Crime Victimization Survey, a really massive survey that they've been doing for 51 years. They survey about 240,000 people a year. And that has shown a huge increase in violent crime. Whether you look at it from 2020 or 2019 before COVID, since 2020, it showed a 55% increase in violent crime, a 42% increase in rapes, a 63% increase in robberies, and a 55% increase in aggravated assaults. Even since 2019, it shows a 19% increase in violent crimes. And just to give people an idea, that increase since 2020 is the largest, by far, percentage increase that's ever occurred over any 3-year period in the 51 years that the data has been put together. And since 2019, it's the second largest increase ever recorded. And so, if you're going to go and ask most people, do you care about what's happening to the number of reported crimes, or do you care about what's happening to total crimes? My guess is most people care about total crimes. And if you give me 30 more seconds, I can give you an example of
Dr.
how those can differ.
I do want to hone in on that. So a lot of this reminds me of, honestly, it reminds me of the Obama jobs reports back, God, this was like 15 years ago now, which is crazy, but they kept revising these jobs reports, revising the numbers back. These revisions here on these crime numbers are not just a small revision. These are staggering. These are historic revisions. I want to talk to you a little bit about whether or not you think that this is just the FBI making mistakes or whether or not you think that there's more to this. We're going to have to take a super quick break, though, folks. You are not going to want to miss the answer to this question when we're back in 2. Welcome back to Nights with Chris Boyle. Joining us now back on the show is Dr. John Lott. Dr. Lott, before the break, we're talking about these staggering FBI crime report revisions, somewhere around 7 points upwards. And this is important because it's not just upwards, but it revised it from a negative trend to a positive trend. Tell us, do you think that this is just FBI mismanagement, or do you think that this is a historic adjustment? What is the explanation behind this?
Well, they explain to some extent why they made the change for 2021, but I haven't seen any explanation, even after kind of the media reports have broken on this for 2022. It could be they're just embarrassed by the change, and that's the reason why they didn't mention it in their press release, and they didn't explain it other than this one extremely vague sentence that they have in their report. But, the bottom line is, whatever the reason, particularly given how much they know, their numbers have been at the center of the political debate over the last year or so. It's outrageous that they weren't transparent on these numbers. The fact that they weren't transparent, and even when I discovered it, I reached out, had my staff reach out to them. They were contacted multiple times, and yet they wouldn't respond. It wasn't until we started getting media coverage on this, and they still haven't responded to myself or my staff, but they've responded to some other media organizations. And the media organizations basically say they're not answering the question. They're not answering why that they made the change, or even acknowledging officially that they've increased it. They don't deny that they've increased it, but it's basically a bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook that they have there. The real
Dr.
people.
Lott, we appreciate you shining a spotlight on this and making sure that the information gets out. Really quick before we go, where can folks support the work that you guys do?
Well, they can find a discussion on this and other things at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org. Thank you.
Dr. John Lott, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And that's all we have for you tonight. Until next time, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, or X, at HeyChrisBoyle. If you like the show, please send feedback to chris.boyle@onn.com. And you can now visit our merch store at Hey Chris Boyle. You could buy hats, you could buy shoes, you could buy bags. I'd like to thank my production team, my director Josh, my editor Raphael, production assistant Brittany, she's back in the building. And to all of you at home, thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night.